Hi, I'm Janiessa Norice, and this is Define Design. Content design is a field focused on developing and organizing information intended for users. To ensure product teams deliver clear guidance or share necessary details, UX writers collect insights from both users of the product and our partners who work on the product. While we have various methods, we find that when working with partners, direct communication is often most effective. In my experience, asking straightforward or follow up questions quickly uncover the key issues or possible solutions. Join me as I chat with senior content designer Swathi Raja, who spends her days wrangling words, scaling content systems, and occasionally psychoanalyzing microcopy. Swati has 9 years of experience and drive that's fueled by a deep curiosity of how people think, click, and occasionally rage quit. Join me as we discuss the importance of clarity and intention within content design and express the need for collaboration with partners. Hey, everybody, I'm here today with Swati, and she is a content designer, as I have mentioned. I will have her introduce herself. She's going to let you know where she's been working, what she's been working on, and let us know what is content design to her.
Hello, people. It is super great being here. I am Swathi, as Janiessa mentioned. I have been a content designer for about 6 years now, and I currently work at Zeta as a senior content designer. We handle fintech products for one of the biggest banks in the country. And to answer the question about what content design means to me, I think it is clarity with intention, where it's not just words. We are actually designing communication. It is about being a user's advocate. It's about making decisions about what needs to be said, how it needs to be said, and when. And to me, I think it is where language meets logic.
That's really nice. Okay, so when we talk about language meeting logic and even bringing in collaboration with partners, for example, what are some ways that you'd like to share on getting the communication that you're having with your partners onto the UI for the user?
Right. So when you think about getting information, so what you can probably do is start with asking for a product note or a PRD or a pre-read or a one pager or whatever document they have, so that you have the same information as them, other than the ones that they get at latest stages when there are like scope changes happening. Ask appropriate question to identify if it is actually a content problem or if it's a product logic problem. That's when content starts shaping the product and not just reacting to it. So be shameless about the questions, be shameless about asking what you want and what you want to know about the product. Suggest stuff if you think it logically makes sense to you, and if it's logically making sense to the user. Because if you put yourself in a user's shoes and you're trying to understand the product to work on it, if you don't understand, then probably the user's not going to understand that as well.
Very true. And so I'm going to dig a little more into the product model and the one pager. I know different companies will call them different things. And just to elaborate on that, this would essentially be a document with the business needs or specifications, technical specifications of the product. So, for example, if the product was an app, it would be everything about the onboarding of the app, the technical limitations that that app may have, the colors that the app includes, what is the purpose of the app, the ideal user, and things like that. And so when dealing with a product model and you have your one pager, if it continues to be that one pager. Um, how do you process the information to say, okay, this may be a logic issue, but I would like to investigate this a little more because it could be a content issue? Or just to call out, do you just take all of the content issues and handle them and then return them to your partners? Or do you prefer to more collaborate and discuss how we can come to better terms for the user?
It is discussion. It's always discussion because let's say a message doesn't perform very well. Instead of jumping on a document or a Figma, you could probably, start asking questions like, why is this happening? Where was the user before? What were they trying to do when this happened? Is there anything that the system can do to prevent it? Think about if the message is even necessary. If we were to fix the UX issues, then probably the probability of the user landing on a page where we need a certain message considerably reduces. And think about it in not just in terms of words, but also in terms of, can I communicate it in a way that makes sense? Would an image help? Would a gif or video help? So start approaching the problem from a perspective of a problem rather than thinking about it in terms of words. Like, so when you approach everyday problems, we don't think about words, and that is kind of how the user also does, because they're not looking for words, they're looking for a solution, and the solution comes in various forms. That not only is content, and that I think is a content designer's job to understand how to solve for it better than to just like jump on a file, write words, and explain it to them in detail.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So it seems like you're pushing to have these deeper one on one communications with your partners, such as design or engineering, to discover these word or these core issues, rather. So,
Right.
what are some methods that you would use to discover the core issues within it, such as like would you use like a word cloud or access different type of products like Google Trends, for example, to discover what word is mostly used in a space versus the other, because some people prefer sign up instead of log in, for example. But and Google Trends would help us to know that. So just curious, what are some of the methods that you've used to just discover the core issues with a product?
Right. So, thinking about it, it's not just about, like I mentioned, it's not just about how you write, it's about how you think about the product. So understand that, you start looking at competitor apps, see if somebody else done whatever you're trying to do better, or even indirect competitors for that matter can give you a wealth of knowledge if you're looking for the right things. So start looking at competitor apps. And because you mentioned word cloud, I do love to do a word cloud, because when I'm starting to write, after I've like figured out that it is indeed a content problem and we may have to solve it with words, the first thing I do is start looking at competitor apps and start picking up words that they're using. It You gather all of those words and it makes a nice word cloud where you understand the terms that are being used in different spaces. And because I have been with e-commerce apps, I've been with fintech apps, the range of words that are being used in different organizations at different contexts makes a lot of sense when you look at all of these competitor apps. So start looking at them, make a nice little word cloud for yourself, and then start picking out words from the word cloud so that it kind of helps you speak the same language about your users. Because if you do not have the space to do user research, this is your best bet at getting things to work and speaking your users language, because somebody else has already done it for you and they're trying to make it work in their apps. Also, one other thing about these competitor apps and doing an analysis is that they also tell you what not to do. So this is one of the best ways to do it. And Google Trends, I personally prefer Google Trends, because at any point in time you can go on Google Trends and look for words and see if the users are interacting with it. You have so many filters, and it's such a beautiful app if you're looking for the kind of words that the users are using with respect to so many other things. And relatively you will be able to find what they're looking for, what are the terms that they're referring to. One more app that I love using is this readability tool, WebFX, or one of those things. You find a lot of readability tools online, and I mean, I know it's not the best measure, but something is better than nothing. And these readability tools give you like a measure of how your content reads, and will 8-year-old understand it, will a 10-year-old understand it. And especially when you're writing for an Indian audience, and this scale is largely based on a US audience, you kind of make sure that if a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old is able to understand, then that probably somebody who's like not very educated here can still make do with the content you have.
That makes a lot of sense. I also enjoy looking at competitor apps to analyze the differences, the similarities, see what users are saying back. Like, what do you like? For example, if it's another payment app, what do you like about this payment app that makes you use it more than the other payment app? And creating a space of opportunity for your own product through learning what the other flaws are, but also seeing what's unnecessary. I think that's a very important part. And another thing that I just like to add that I like to do, especially when I'm new to the product team, is do my own walkthrough and notate what confuses me. Where did I get lost? Especially if it's the first time that I've ever used this product, because I'm essentially just a user. I'm not looking at it with my content designer lenses. I'm looking at it as a consumer. So I got confused here. This didn't make sense to me. And this is the only opportunity where I can go to the people that created it directly and say, hey, this doesn't work. This doesn't make any sense. Can we fix this? And we can actually fix it together. From doing your word cloud, gathering the correct terms and those necessary terms that we're going to like move forward with to shape the content that will be put onto the UI, which, if I have not mentioned, the UI would be the user interface, and it is what everyone sees. That would be different from the UX, which would be the user's experience. So that would be how they feel about the journey or using the app. And so now that we've clarified that and we have our words in our word cloud, we can journey into an approach. How do we want to approach this problem now that we know, okay, these are the terms that we want to move forward with. This is how we want our users to feel while they're using the app. And these are the tasks that they need to complete while they're using the app. So what if you can just talk to me about some of your approaches, whether they be direct or indirect, to help you to solve these problems?
Right. So when you're thinking about approaches to content design, and like I was talking to you about, content is designing with words, we need to stop looking at it from the perspective of words and start digging into the problem. Look at user behavior, try to understand um, what the users are doing versus what they are saying. There is a world of information hidden in that gap between what the users are doing versus what they are saying. And to put it in short, it's figuring out what is wrong versus not what is looking wrong, you know. So start thinking about the problem in itself. Like I mentioned previously, is it even a content problem? Is it something that we want to solve with content, or is there any other ways? And start asking questions about the limitations of the system and the technical capabilities. Question the possible solutions that you can come up with, that does not just stick to content. Do we think about what are the users input? You know, what is the where are they when the action is happening? And are they able to understand it, or are they able to not proceed due to a technical issue? What happens then? Think about all the possible use cases. I mean, it obviously is not humanly possible for us to do all of it, but kind of think, if you can put yourself in a user's shoes and think about all the places where things are getting done, then you'd probably have like a wealth of information. And the other thing is, think about when you're speaking to your designers, stakeholders, or even like you're lurking around random Slack threads where the problem is being discussed, that is where you get the trove of information that you're actually looking for. And it's not just on the product note, because somebody is sharing a user testimonial about something not working, and because you are in ground zero looking at the product from various angles, you know for a fact that you can solve it. And that is how it happens. It's not just on the PRT or a walkthrough that somebody gave you. You start looking for information wherever possible. And if you look at it, truly look at it, it is all of these hidden places that give you the information that you're actually looking for.
That makes a lot of sense. And it kind of rings to, I quoted one of our earlier conversations that we had, and you said, be shameless about your needs, ideas, and confusion. And I love that quote. I just want to say, I like to say, I let my curiosity lead me. And it's kind of like you fight imposter syndrome a little bit, because you're talking to like brilliant minded like engineers or something, and you're just like, yeah, but it would be cool if we could do that. Just wanting to be taken seriously, but also bringing them kind of to a grounded sense, like, if we can do all of these things, why can't we do this one simple thing as well? And then collecting user feedback to just see, did my curiosity really help? Did it bring an impact? Or should I just, remain in this space where I am and just making the edits and watching the term guidelines and stuff? And I'd honestly say for me, it's always helped just to have that curiosity and have that shamelessness, even with saying like, hey, I am not well versed in this space. I don't know the nuances for whatever the situation is. For example, I've worked with developer only products, very specific audience, but it's like, how can I meet their needs if I don't know what they are, because I'm not a developer? So having that time with developers to truly understand what all of their needs were was very eye-opening to me. But I could also tell that some of them were so used to talking to other developers that they forgot, oh, I have to explain this. Kind of like how we adopt UX and it's just UX all the time. But someone who doesn't work within UX is like, what is that? And so just taking the moment to say, oh, this is what these things mean, to bring that clarity. And so, just for your own journey, when you've collected user feedback and you've had these ideas, and you share them with your team, out of curiosity, have you noticed a better impact with you being a part of the design process from that moment forward? Or do you feel as though everything kind of stayed the same?
I think there has been massive impact on the kind of you know uh, in the way that people start approaching you for problems is has changed drastically, because after a certain point they start understanding that you're part of the team, and you are kind of trying to solve the problem that they are trying to solve, but in a different way than that they may have taken. And because you mentioned imposter syndrome and thinking about curiosity leading, I wanted to mention this, that irrespective of whether your idea or your suggestion sounds dumb, you're thinking if somebody else has already done it, have they thought about it? It is better to pose that question and find out an answer, because you'll get to understand the reason behind why your thought process was not picked up already, and if somebody had thought about it. And if not, it's the best thing, we can try it out and see if it works. Sorry, I digressed. And back to the question about impact on how people have started approaching me after this and the collaboration. But it has changed drastically, like I mentioned, because um there is a certain understanding between you now, because they know for a fact that you are part of the team, and like I mentioned. And also the way they start approaching you when they start the discussion, versus previously when you were just a content person who was just filling in the gaps and fixing lorem ipsums. that completely changes, and they understand, they start giving you more responsibilities. They come to you with questions like, does this work, will it make sense to the user, which they probably would not have thought about previously, in terms of the words they're using, or even the ideas for that matter are like, they are, it's one of the best things, to go from that space of being a glorified chat gpt to going to somebody who is like a proper contributor to the entire process. It's a glorious journey.
That sounds amazing. And I know that there are so many content designers that strive to have that, as they call it, seat at the table, so to speak. And sometimes it does have to be earned. It's not always automatically given. Just because we got the
Absolutely.
job doesn't mean we got the job, so to speak. But I wanted to also dive into getting user feedback, knowing that this brings a great impact to product teams. So when we get into getting user feedback, I'd really like to know some of the methods or approaches that you've used just to gain more insight. And this is under the guise that there's not a UX researcher on the team, because sometimes we don't have a UX researcher available, or they may not have the bandwidth to assist you with the insights that you desire. So, how would you take that approach to gather those insights on your own?
Right. So, to answer that, one of the best ways to do it, just lurk around on Reddit, Quora, one of these user generated content platforms where they're either ranting about the product or raving about it. That gives you so much information about the product. If you're looking for stuff, that's like the best place to go. Look at YouTube videos of your products, the competitors' products, anything about whatever you're working on, anything in the realm of whatever you're working about. You should go on YouTube and start searching for the things, because again, there are like tons of reviewers who are talking about it. um, Good, bad, ugly, whatever that is, gather all of those information, because at the end of the day, they are kind of your users, and they're giving this. If somebody is giving that information to your user, you know how your product should be, so that these feedbacks don't come back to you. Reddit is a fabulous thing, like I mentioned. One more thing that you can do is see if you can find actual users. That there is nothing that beats an actual user. And I understand that the teams may not have UX researchers. I think as content designers, we put on so many hats other than just being like a writer who can like you write words, So put on your UX researcher hat. See if you can get in touch with your users by any means. At least in my case, I kind of gather user data based on certain conditions and start calling them up, because we do not have a dedicated team of researchers or the bandwidth to do research. So we call the users to understand their problems with the flow, and we try to solve that later. And one more thing that you can probably do is, if you do not have the resources to even call the users or gather the user set, is find people in your company, within your company, who are not into the product. Like it could be somebody who is in the housekeeping department, or somebody who is a security at in your building. Anybody that uses the app, but they do not know that you are even part of that product. So go talk to them, and understand the problems that they're facing. And one more thing that I wanted to add here is, I know that we are trying to get feedback and we want to understand a lot of things. When we're trying to do that, we kind of come off as we may come off as pushy. So the idea here is to go talk to them as if you're trying to understand what the product is from them. You try to get your let's say the security guy, ask him what the product is about. Do you know how it works? Can you tell me how you use it? So these are questions that can help them explain to you better about what is working and what is not. They would probably give you hacks about your product even you don't know about. So those are like the best kinds of things that you can do to do user research when you do not have somebody dedicated or you lack the resources to do it.
Hey, I think those are really insightful tips to just kind of get started with discovering what do the users think of this. And just to add, you do have like those, and you probably did mention the social media channels to see, are people tweeting, for example, about some of the things that they do or don't like about this app, or what are they saying? And Reddit is an amazing place to discover people's thoughts. So I can only imagine the feedback that was received from that, or even with you mentioning doing phone calls. I'm pretty sure that that can get elaborate as well, with just people laying out, this is what I don't like. This is what I don't understand, which can be quite insightful. Another question that I do have for you is when it comes to tracking the progression of your product once you've made these changes and you've gotten this feedback, what are some ways that you can track? Is this still working or did it work at all?
So for starters, what you can do is talk to your PMs because they are like the best
Mhm.
people to give you information on whether your product is working, has the change even gone live for that matter, because we ship out content at unimaginable space because there is always content work happening and we try to do a lot of things, but we do not kind of keep track of things because we always have the next big problem to solve for. And one of the best ways to do it is talk to your PMs and understand what is happening. The other thing that you can do is, if you think you can handle a little bit of tech stuff, figure out the platforms that your PMs are using, PMs or stakeholders or whoever that is using, and probably get like a 10-minute crash course on what is being tracked, how they track it, just for the things that you want to track for content as well. Like for example, um, if I were to track a screen, I would probably think, if it's an FAQ, I would probably think about time taken on the page to really understand if the user had read through the product versus are they just clicking on raise a ticket because they are trying to get to a human as soon as possible. This gives you that space to understand what is happening before you can come up with your hypotheses as to what is working versus what is not working. So trying to understand these nuances helps you a lot, and for that you will need these tools. So ask your PMs if they do not have the time. They almost always have, because even they are trying to make things work. Figure out the content metrics that you really want to track. Like for example, if it is on a flow, I would probably cross through a page. I'd want the user to move to the next page as quickly as possible, whereas for an FAQ, that metric is completely the opposite, where I want them to take a moment and read that thing before they go on to raise a ticket. So first figure out the metrics that you'd want to track, and then go ahead and talk to people who have access to that metrics. And if not, one simple thing you can do is look for goodness again on these social media apps to see if, like, hey, there was a revamp. What do you think of that? Somebody must have raved about it or ranted about whether the new thing that we thought was fabulous, how is it performing. That is like one of the best places to go to if you are not able to get stuff.
I know you update the team with the additional findings, like, hey, we had this issue. I discovered this issue, collaborated with whomever, and then you share your findings with your team. If you notice any changes from that moment, how would you address that with the team? Do you do it with a broader share out, like an email with everyone attached to it? Or would you have like a meeting where you're doing more of a presentation to say, hey, these are the things, this is what we did, this is where we are, and this is what happened. How would you go about sharing those findings?
So it is largely based on the scale of your findings and the scale of the research that went into it, and even the effort that it had taken to build the product in the first place. Like let's say if it's just one screen that we're trying to make it work, and the one screen that the users are getting stuck versus doing an entire flow, or fixing sequences and stuff in the flow, then the share out would probably be a broader one. But for small ones, you talk to the immediate stakeholders just so they know what is happening, and then make it a bigger thing where you're sharing it out on emails and stuff as you have the entire thing wrapped up. Like, for example, you could probably do a retro of sorts to understand what had happened in the first place. And then once your changes have been implemented, and the users have feedback about it, then you can just sit down with your immediate stakeholders to figure out what is happening, and you know see if whatever the users are saying is a technical thing, or versus is it a copy or a design change, or it could be anything. So the share out largely depends on the scale. But if you think you need a little bit of visibility, go all in is one of my biggest advices, because for the kind of work that we do, we don't flaunt it enough. For the kind of impact that content work has, it is not evangelized as much as we'd like it to. So yes, be, like I said, keep saying, be shameless about everything, and this in particular, be shameless about your results, because you're bringing it and it deserves the limelight.
That is a beautiful way to put it for sure. And I agree with that. I was gonna say, like, always do a broad share out. Because you never know who can see it. You never know who can be inspired by it. And so many of the people that we work with are unaware of the different things that we're able to bring to the table. And that's another way of saying, oh wow, this is something else that content can deliver, assist with, or have a great impact on. And you just never know. So I'm always like, yes, send that email, attach it, attach it, attach it. Always put on your biggest smile and present, because your work matters just as much as everyone else's work. We are essentially the user's proxy. And so we have to know how to balance out the business needs, the technical limitations, the design rules, and we have to communicate to the user and make it pleasant for them at the same time. And learning how to keep that balance is a day-to-day process. You don't get just this one and done plug and chug routine. It is not like that. You always have to kind of keep your eye on the ball and know, like, when things are changing. Just even as society changes, the way that they interact with technology, even in the last 5 years, So just always being aware of how can I help to, I look at it as, how can I help users through this technology experience? And I think that it's kind of a cool way to approach it, because it takes me out of all I'm doing is proofreading and making sure the guidelines are adhered to. I'm doing a little more to make sure that they're enjoying it, so they return, that they're tell their friends, you know. I know that as a content person, I like to read all of the words on products when I use them. And when they're bad, there's a high chance I have something to say about it. But I know that it matters and it makes a difference. And when it's really good, I'm like, oh wow, I really like how they updated this. I really like the comments that are made, or how it's personable or more human like. That's really entertaining, or gives for a pleasant experience as opposed to a competitor, right? So as we come to a close, I do want to say thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with me, and just all of the impact that you've had and your passions in this area of content design, because you have so much to share. And just seeing how you've been able to take that curiosity and be shameless about it is just honestly amazing. And knowing that this has led you to these amazing spaces within your professionalism, and knowing that, like, your partners trust you more just because you're trusting yourself, essentially, with your shameless curiosity. And so, as a close, I just want to ask you one more question. If you were to talk to anyone that was interested in content design, how would you tell them to get started? Or better yet, for those that are in content design, I think this is a more appropriately way to phrase it because we're facing so many changes now as an industry. How would you say, what would you give advising to people who are facing potential layoffs or who can't seem to get with some of the shifts in like working in Figma, for example, or wanting to be more in the UI? Because some of us prefer to write an article to describe the entire process instead of that UI space. So what are some words of encouragement that you would have for some of us that are struggling in this space and wanting a seat at the table, but not really knowing how to take that approach?
So this happened to me once where I was struggling to, um, fix something with engineering, and I did not know what was happening. And one of my senior leaders asked me about it, and I did not have a clue. And I was just ranting to them about me not knowing it, and he gave me one wholesome piece of advice, which was, it's not your job to know. That healed something in me, and that is something that I would tell. I like to tell people who are like struggling with imposter syndrome. They don't know what they're trying to do. It's not your job to know all of it at this moment in time. All you have to do is take a step back and figure out one thing, just one thing for this moment. If you think, if there is one thing that you can fix with content, with whatever you're struggling with, I know this is turning into a TED talk, but one thing you can fix, I think you're good to go. And thinking about people who are struggling with layoffs and stuff, I'd like to say that there is so much more. There is so much more awareness about content design that has like come up at least in the past 3-4 years, compared to when I started, where there was no difference between a UX writer, content designer, copywriter, technical writer, and so many other forms of writing. So whatever you're doing, do it with passion, because that there is nothing that can match the passion that you bring to the table. And content design is such an amazing space, and with uh, the influx of AI, I keep getting asked this question about, will AI take our jobs? And I like to quote something that I read, that AI is probably not going to take our jobs, but somebody who knows how to leverage AI will. Not to sound scary, but you just start understanding technology techniques, and you know you grow as a content designer. You grow with the technology, with the tech world that is growing. I am pretty sure you will land wherever you want to. And one last thing, because you mentioned Figma and documents, I think essentially Figma is kind of also a document, but in a shorter format. And somebody who is a writer, I know for a fact that we can make it as short as we want or as long as we want. So be shameless about asking for Figma access, because that is where all the good stuff is happening. And um, when we're fighting for our rights as content designer, we cannot just stick to a document and be like, hey, this is the document, can you you can update it on Figma. No, get that Figma access, make the design look messy, because that is how you learn. And as content designers, I think we also have to start working on Figma and be like mini designers, if not coming up with entire wireframes and stuff. But we should definitely, at least in my purview, we should definitely pick up the basics of Figma, if not the entirety of it. And thank you so much for having me, Janisa. It has been fabulous chatting with you, and I've had a blast. And all the best for the rest of your series. I just can't wait for the entire series to release.
I'm super excited too. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show and just helping me to highlight not only content design, but also collaboration with content designers. And I think that's a true key part that is missing in our working relationships across the board. Just knowing that we have so many things that we can offer and deliver. And even if it's just, I want to talk to you because I don't know what I'm trying to do, but I just need to get my thoughts out. I've had a lot of those calls too because honestly, we all communicate, but all of us are not great at it. So taking the time to say, okay, I need this and this and this to happen, but this is what they can only see. Okay, so what do they need to know? And just being able to have those one on one chats with our partners so that they can relax and know they don't need to know everything. We cannot know together and we can still progress. I think it's so fruitful just to kind of snatch the rug off the floor. It's dusty. We got to clean it up. We have to talk about these things, and there's nothing wrong with that because once we have these conversations, we can build trust with one another and we can draft better content and create a better experience for our user in the end, which is the entire goal. So once again, thank you so much. And I'm so glad that we were finally able to record and have this conversation.
Same here, same here. It has been a fabulous chat, and I loved sharing my experience with content design, and it has been a journey for me. So it has just been fabulous to even think about it and relive the memories from where I started to where I am now, and it has just been great, and it was lovely talking to you.
That was Swathi Raja. From our chat, you can see that content designers have so much to bring to a product's experience. I hope that you've gained insight from Swati's methods for gathering user feedback and strategies for product progression. I also want to emphasize the importance of being curious, leaning into that curiosity, and collaborating with partners to solve problems and or enhance experiences. If you'd like to continue this conversation with Swati, I've placed her LinkedIn information in the show notes. If you like this show, please hit subscribe on the platform of your choice. This episode was written and produced by me, Janiessa Norice, while editing and post-production is done by Digital Sunflower. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, turn your problems into opportunities.